"I'm sure I will," she said, and we left it at that. To say her accusations had been gravely unjust would be to defend myself where no defense is called for. I merely remark in passing that I gave orders to set aside a still greater fund toward finding a reagent against the grass, and to put those who had lately assisted Miss Frances in charge. I did this not because I swallowed her strained analogy about a sufferer with his legs cut off, but for purely practical reasons. The world was very well as it was, but an effective weapon against the grass might at last make possible the never-discarded vision of utilizing it beneficially. Meanwhile, life went on with a smoothness strange and gratifying to those of us born into a period of strife and restlessness. No more wars, strikes, riots, agitation for higher wages, or social experiments by wild-eyed fanatics. Those whose limitations laid out a career of toil performed their function with as much efficiency as one could expect, and we others who had risen and separated ourselves from the herd carried our responsibilities and accepted the rewards which went with them. The ships of the World Congress continued patrolling the coasts of the deserted continents, and restrictions were so far relaxed as to permit plane flights over the area to take motion pictures and confirm the grass had lost none of its vigor. Beyond this, the generality of mankind forgot the weed and the regions it covered, living geographically as though Columbus had never set foot from Palos. It was at this time a new philosophic idea was advanced, giving the lie to Miss Frances's dictum that no new thoughts were being thought, which was, briefly, that the grass was essentially a good thing in itself, that the world had not merely made the best of a bad situation, but had been brought to a beneficent condition through the loss of the Western Hemisphere. Mankind had desperately needed a break upon its heedless course, some instrumentality to limit it and bring it to realization of its proper province. The grass had acted as such an agent, and now, rightly chastised, man could go about his fit business. This concept gained almost immediate popular support, so far as it filtered down to the masses at all. Prominent schoolmen endorsed it wholeheartedly, statesmen gave it qualified approval, in principle, and the Pope issued an encyclical calling for a return of Christian resignation and submission. Hardly was the ink dry upon the expressions of thanksgiving for the punishment which had brought about a new and better frame of mind, then the philosophy was suddenly and dramatically tested by events. The island of Juan Fernandez, Robinson Crusoe's island, a peak pushed out of the waters of the Pacific 400 miles west of Chile, densely populated with refugees and a base for patrol boats, was overrun by the grass. It was an impossible happening. Every inhabitant had had personal experience of the grass and was fearfully alert against its appearance. The patrols covered the sea between it and the mainland constantly. The distance was too far for wind-borne seeds. The tenuous hypothesis that gulls had acted as carriers was accepted simply for want of a better. But the World Congress wasted no time looking backward. Although between Juan Fernandez and the next land westward the distance was 3 times greater than between it and South America, the Congress seized upon the only island to which it could possibly spread, Sala y Gomez, and made of it a veritable fortress against the grass. Not only did ships guard its waters by day and keep it brilliantly lit with their searchlights at night, but swift pursuit planes bristling with machine guns brought down every bird in flight within 1,000 miles. The island itself was sown with salt a half-mile thick after being mined with enough explosives to blow it into the sea. The world, or that portion of it which had not fully accepted all the implications of the doctrine of submission, watched eagerly. But the ships patrolled an empty sea. The searchlights reflected only the glittering saline crystals. The migrant birds never reached their destination. The outpost held, impregnable. Again, everyone breathed easier. 500 miles beyond this focal point, its convict settlement long abandoned, was Easter Island, Rapa Nui, home of the great monoliths whose origin had ever been a puzzle. Erect or supine, these colossal statues were strewn all over the island. Anthropologists and archaeologists still came to give them cursory inspection, and it was on such a visit an unmistakable clump of grass was found. Immediately the ships were rushed from Sala y Gomez. Planes carrying tons of salt took off from Australia, and the whole machinery of the World Congress was swiftly put in operation. But it was too late. Easter Island was swamped. Uninhabited Ducie went next, and Pitcairn, home of the descendants of the Bounty mutineers, followed before even the slightest precautions could be taken. The grass was jumping gaps of thousands of miles in a breathless steeplechase. On Pitcairn there was nothing to do but rescue the inhabitants. Vessels stood by to carry them and their livestock off. The pale brown men and women left for the most part docilely, but the last Adams and the last McCoy refused to go. Once before, our people were forced to leave Pitcairn and found nothing but unhappiness. We will stay on the island to which our fathers brought their wives. There was no stopping the grass now, even if the means had been to hand. The Gambiers, the Tuamotus, and the Marquesas were swallowed up. Tahiti, dwelling place of beautiful if syphilitic women, disappeared under a green blanket, as did the Cook Islands, Samoa, and the Fijis. The grass jumped southward to a foothold in New Zealand and northward into Micronesia. Panic infected the Australians, and a mass migration to the central part of the country was begun, but with little hope the surrounding deserts would offer any effective barrier. My first thought, when I heard the grass for the second time had broken its bounds, was that I had perhaps been a little hasty with Miss Frances. It was not at all likely she would succeed where so many better trained and better equipped scientists had so far failed, but I felt a vicarious sympathy with her as being out of the picture when all her colleagues were striving with might and main to save the world, especially after the years she had spent on Mount Whitney. It would be an act of simple generosity on my part, I thought, to give her the wherewithal to entertain the illusion of importance. When all was said and done, she was a woman, and I could afford a chivalrous gesture even in the face of her overweening arrogance. I am sorry to say she responded with complete ill grace. I knew you'd eventually have to come crawling to me to save your hide. You mistake the situation entirely, Miss Frances, I informed her with dignity. I am conferring, not asking favors. I have every confidence in my research staff. My God, those guinea pig murderers, those discovery forgers, those white-smocked acolytes in the Temple of Yes. You value your life or your purse at exactly what they're worth if you expect those drugstore clerks to preserve them for you. I doubt if either is in the slightest danger, I assured her confidently. Hysterics have lost perspective. Long before the grass becomes an immediate concern, my drugstore clerks, with less exalted opinions of their talents than you, will have found the means to destroy it. A soothing fairy tale. Wiener, the truth is not in you. You know the reason you come to me is that you're frightened, scared, terrified. Well, strangely enough, I'm not going to reject your munificence. I'll accept it, because to do God's work is more important than any personal pride of mine, or any knowledge that one of the best things Synodon Dactylon could do, if I do not take too much upon myself in judging a fellow creature, would be to bury Albert Wiener. I remained unmoved by her tirade. When you returned from Whitney, you told me there remained only details to be worked out. About how long do you think it will be before you have a workable compound? She burst into a laugh and took out her toothpick to point it at me. Go and put your penny in another slot if you want an answer to an idiot question like that. How long? A day, a month, a year, 10 years. In 10 years, I began. Exactly, she said, and put away the toothpick.